I am here today to announce that Democracy Watch is taking the next step in its years-long process to hold the Trudeau government and Prime Minister Trudeau and the Trudeau cabinet accountable for pressuring the Attorney General back in the fall of 2018 to intervene and stop the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin. And Democracy Watch has chased after the RCMP right back since these revelations were made in February 2019, filed access to information requests and pushed on those requests, and has had now more than 3,600 pages of internal investigation documents disclosed by the RCMP. And what those documents show is that the RCMP did a weak, incomplete investigation. They only interviewed 4 of 15 key witnesses, and they trusted the public statements of everyone involved in pressuring the Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, at the time. And they also changed the standard that they used for determining whether there had been an obstruction of justice, using an incorrect legal standard for making that assessment. They also essentially didn't give any updates for years, and as I mentioned with our access to information requests, we had to pursue them and finally got full disclosure after more than 2 years of the internal investigation records. As well, the RCMP essentially characterized everything that the people said who were involved in pressuring the Attorney General from the Prime Minister on down in a favorable way, while doubting the claims and constantly essentially tilting the investigation in favor of not prosecuting anyone, and then made a secret, behind closed doors and very questionable decision not to prosecute anyone. Given the evidence, and given as well that the RCMP did not apply the correct legal standard in terms of reviewing the evidence and determining whether there had been an obstruction of justice, and also given that the RCMP did not consider in its investigation whether the Prime Minister or anyone else had committed a breach of trust, Democracy Watch is today filing an application in Ontario Court of Justice for court approval to pursue a private prosecution of these allegations of obstruction of justice and breach of trust. And that's what I'm here today to announce. And Democracy Watch's position has always been during the investigation that the RCMP should not have been investigating this matter, should not be investigating any matter involving federal cabinet ministers, because the RCMP commissioner, the deputy commissioner, and the heads of every division of the RCMP are all chosen by and serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister and the cabinet. And as a result, they lack independence and are vulnerable to political interference. And what should have happened is that a special prosecutor should have been chosen, not by the ruling party cabinet, not by the RCMP commissioner who serves at the pleasure of that cabinet, but through a fully independent process. And that special prosecutor should have both directed the investigation and also issued a public statement at the conclusion of the investigation concerning prosecutions, and if there was a decision not to prosecute anyone, that would have been disclosed, and obviously if there had been a prosecution, that would have been pursued in court.
Agreed.
Another sign of the RCMP's lack of independence and weak investigation in this situation is that the RCMP accepted the Trudeau cabinet's very restricted order in terms of what cabinet documents could be disclosed to the RCMP for its investigation, and also what Jody Wilson-Raybould, the former Attorney General, and others could say about the situation and the pressuring by the Prime Minister and others who were acting at the direction of the Prime Minister. And what the RCMP should have done, and if there was a special prosecutor who was independent, they probably would have done, is they would have applied to court to get access to those internal cabinet communications, which are obviously key evidence concerning whether the obstruction of justice or breach of trust occurred. So Damarswatch's position now that the investigation is over is that a judge in an open court hearing all the testimony from all the witnesses and also considering all the evidence would make a decision as to whether a prosecution should be approved and Damarswatch allowed to pursue this private prosecution. So that's what we are going to be applying for today in the Ontario Court of Justice. And hopefully the courts will recognize, and our documents that are filed with the application point out all of the weak and incomplete aspects of the RCMP's investigation. And again, importantly, that the RCMP utilized the incorrect legal standard for determining whether there had been an obstruction of justice. They used a standard that would require that there be a corrupt intent by the Prime Minister or others.
Which we know there
and
was.
That is not the legal standard for obstruction of justice. The standard is simply that it was willful and that there was intent to do it.
Damn.
So we will be hopefully meeting with the Justice of the Peace of the Ontario Court of Justice today. We will certainly be filing the application. The meeting may come later. And then the process is the Justice of the Peace will decide whether the evidence and arguments that we are putting forward warrant what is called a pre-enquête hearing. And at that hearing, we would present our case in brief, essentially, and that hearing would then determine whether a private prosecution can go ahead. What can happen is that the Attorney General of Ontario, a lawyer representing the Crown Counsel of the Attorney General of Ontario, can step in and take over the prosecution. So that is possible that could happen, and then the Attorney General's office in Ontario would have the discretion to stop the prosecution if they so wished.
Damn.
We hope that that process will also be done through a special prosecutor because the Attorney General of Ontario is obviously a politician from a political party, the Progressive Conservatives, and we don't want the rest of the steps of this investigation and accountability process for this situation to be tainted in any way by partisanship in the way that we believe it has been tainted by partisanship
That's
to
fair.
date.
That's fair.
I welcome any questions that you have. Thank you.